Welcome, Geoff, to Metallarium Pages. It's a great pleasure to talk with you about the Vicious Rumors, this new album, The Devil's Asylum, and more things relating to the metal world in general. So we are starting by asking how are you doing today, and how is the band during the last years? Because Celebration Decay was released in 2020 at the time of the pandemic. Now we have this new
That's
album, The Devil's Asylum.
that's right. It's interesting what happened. We in around 2018, uh, Digital Dictator was re-released by a record company, and and I had throughout time, record companies have gotten the rights to our early albums for a limited time and put out releases. And I just have a theory, like every time labels do that, I like to book a tour around it. Then it's like Vicious Rumors, is a part of it too. And it worked really well. We ended up doing like we did Digital Dictator for 2018 and 19. And
Mhm.
then after the pandemic, we did the Atlantic years, a big tour in Europe and one in the States. And then last year, Soldiers of the Night got re-released, and we did like almost 80 shows. We did 40 shows with Raven and 25 shows in the US and Europe on our own. So that's what we were busy doing. We were playing classic tours. We must have did 250 shows. And the good side effect from that was it really put me in touch with like the old school Vicious Rumors, and I wanted to bring some of that back, some of that magic that we connected with people on those early albums, bring that back to the new album. And so it worked out really well, inspirational wise. And then, here we are 5 years later now with a new lineup and a new album.
Okay, okay, nice, nice. So, and when this kind of thing, so yes, how many things changed for you the promotion of the celebration of Decay, because that album was released during the pandemic, and now we have out this situation outside of the pandemic. So for you, how many things changed? The promotions, all this kind of stuff during the pandemic, and now this outside of the pandemic, this new album.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about like, Celebration Decay was our last album that came out during the pandemic, and we were talking about not putting it out then and waiting till it was over. But then we just came to the conclusion if we do that, then nothing's going to happen. No gigs, no new album, no nothing, you know? So we just decided let's put the album out, and at least a lot of people are staying home, they can get the album if they want, they get some new music. So but it was odd. It was definitely a strange feeling to make a record and then not do one show to promote it, because 2 years went by and there were no shows on Vicious Rumors level, and so yeah, it was a strange feeling, but quite honestly, it didn't have the magic that the Devil's Asylum does, and sometimes things just happen for a reason. We got a great chemistry right now with Chalice in Denver, and longtime bass player Robin, of course, Larry Howe, and myself. Um, and it's reflected in the music and on the album, the energy and the sort of feeling we have together. And so it's an exciting time. And unfortunately for me, I broke my shoulder. That's why
Okay.
I'm in this fucking crazy getup here.
Mhm.
On the last show of the European tour. So we were actually supposed to be in Chicago tomorrow night with a record release party and a 5 week United States tour, like 30 shows. But we had to postpone that. So we're pushing everything back to 2026. We'll be out around March, May, July in that area.
Mm.
So all the touring for this album is coming next year, unfortunately, because of I had a pretty bad break and
Mhm.
dislocation and whatnot. So it just takes a while to heal. got to let it heal right the first time, you know. But
Yeah,
I'll be
well,
back as I'll be back absolutely as soon as I can, and we're really excited about the new record. It's been a great response so far, and it comes out tomorrow, so people can go get it or order it, or it's really exciting.
okay, okay, nice, nice. So now we're talking about because yes, this album will release it the last day from August. So now, and so how it was the reception until now, especially about the people, the comments, the reviews, and all these kind of things. And how do you take, for example, about review?
Well, I'm of course I'm happy when everybody else likes it. I try to make music that I like and that Vicious Rumors likes as a band, and then we go from there. But the reviews and the response of the new lineup and this new album have been just over the top. Like I couldn't really ask for any better. We got like some 10 out of 10 reviews and 5 out of 5 reviews, and couple guys were saying, "Oh, this should be in a category of like new album of the year," and just like saying people in the press are just saying incredible things about it. And we did a tour. We did 20 dates in Europe, and people loved it. We played the singles live as they came out, and so it's been a high time for Vicious Rumors, even though I broke my arm and we had to postpone some shows. The excitement around the new band and the new album is at all-time high.
Mm. Okay, okay. Well, you mentioned that you composed this album during the transition of the previous one to this new one because you tried you did like 90 gigs around to promote the last album when the pandemic over at that moment. So now exactly and related to this, when do you decide to writing songs for this new album? It was during the pandemic or exactly during the days or perhaps a year ago?
Yeah, actually, I was not very productive musically during the pandemic. I was a little bit mentally defeated. I was like, oh man, I wish I could say like, yeah, I wrote like 30 songs and I learned how to speak Cantonese. I'm also a black belt at karate, and I learned how to surf 30-foot waves. No, I mean, I'd love to be able to say like I did a bunch of great stuff. And I talked to some people, and a lot of people really achieved a lot of very cool personal goals during that time. But I was a little bit more like a deer in the headlights.
Mhm.
Um, it was after that when we got back on track is when I really picked up speed again.
Okay, okay, nice, nice. So now talking about well, in your career you have more than 10 albums in your career. It's amazing for a band. Especially you create this band since 1979. So more than will be just in a couple of years more will be more than 50 years that you created this album. So an amazing accomplishment for a band.
Thank,
You
thank
never
you.
you never you never stop the band. You still continue releasing albums because there's bands now, as you can see, releasing albums during the 80s, then disappears the whole 90s because it was a different trend, then whole 2000s and appear recently. In 10 years ago, that's appeared the old bands releasing new albums. So now, how do you consider it by yourself that you are the gatekeeper from the sound from Vision Rumors?
Well, I mean, I lead the direction. I lead the direction in the band. So I always have, and I guess as time goes on, I get deeper involved in it. But I surround myself with really talented musicians. Like always. So they Vicious Rumors is definitely a team sport. I'm a big part of that team, but we're definitely a collaboration of passion amongst very passionate artists.
Mhm.
My buddies are just, they blow me away with their musical abilities and instincts sometimes. And so I just bring it. I'll come to the table with a lot of the main ideas, and I'll make a demo.
Mhm.
And then when I give it to the guys, it's just like a picture to see what it kind of sounds like. I don't give it to them and say, okay, I need you guys to listen to this and learn it note for note. And this is how the album has to be. It's not like that at all.
Mhm.
I'm giving them just a vision so they can kind of go, oh, okay, I see what you're going for. And
Mhm.
then I leave everybody is completely free to suggest parts or come up with their own idea for it or their own spin on it. And honestly, most of the time, they turn something in and I'm just like going, oh, that's fucking great. Even if it's something I didn't think of, like something a little different. Of course, they're really talented guys. In fact, Robin, Denver, and Larry came in the studio and just knocked out their parts. And like everything they did, I just went, thumbs up, man. We're gonna put that together. And then Chalice and I spent a week together doing
Mhm.
the vocals and kind of getting to know each other. It's a little bit different with the vocals because it's just a little bit more of a focal point, and so we had to work together, and it was a great experience. I mean, Chalice is a great guy. Um, we kind of took a chance on each other because we didn't know each other, and
Mhm.
all of a sudden we were thrown in very tight quarters making a record and then on tour in a van, and he was great, man. And I think we have a lot of respect for each other, and so we're off to a really good start, and with Denver also.
Hmm. Okay. Yes, you said one thing about this because usually the vocals are the face of the band in many bands. We have Iron Maiden, we have Judas Priest, and we have a lot of bands. When the singer is like the main concept in a band, especially from the 80s or 90s, or the 80s
Yeah.
mostly, or the 70s. So now for you, how it was the transitions from the old vocalist for the new vocalist? How do you want or how do you look to find this is one will be the best vocalist now from Vicious Rumors?
Well, what happened this time was we narrowed it down. We were looking at people like all over the place. It was mostly word of mouth between like friends and people in the industry.
Mhm.
And so we would go around and check, and we checked all these people out, and then we narrowed it down to like 14 that we thought maybe could do it. And then from there, it was a final four. We got it down to four guys, and Chalice made the final four. And he
Mhm.
was also the first guy to reach out to me about 6 months before I was even looking for a singer. He just contacted me and was like, Geoff, I love the band. I just want you to know, if you ever need a singer, love to work with you guys. So he was already on my radar, and I was like, oh, this is great, and he made it to the final four. And then what he did, we just look basically what we're looking for someone with a great work ethic, someone that's serious about the music, someone has the talent level to be in the band, and someone that can be a team player and be reliable and just do what you say you're going to do. Just because we have a very hard work ethic in the band. We do a lot of long tours, they're hard tours. We play a lot of complicated songs, especially for singers. There's a lot of vocal power that's needed to be able to do it night after night, and so it's a demanding job. And but that's what we look for. And Chalice, without even asking him, he sent us a version of him singing Ship of Fools with no music, no microphones, no PA system, just like you or I sitting right here in a room. And man, we could hear every little bit of his voice. It was just so fucking strong and clear, and it blew us away because it sounded in tune and in time, and just sounded great. And so we thought, that's it, that's our guy. No one, we didn't ask someone to do that, he just did it on his own. So that's how it worked this time. And
Mm.
with Denver Cooper, I his band opened for us, NZM. They did about 5 shows with us in Texas, and the first night I saw him play, I was just like, oh my god, this guy's amazing. And so I just stayed in touch with him. And then a year later, I needed a guitar player. So he was my first call, and he accepted the offer right away. And the rest is history, man. It was the smoothest guitar change ever.
Mm, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Okay, amazing, amazing. Well, I didn't know that she sent he sent you a vocal rehearsal without any kind of effects or this kind. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah. Just, I mean, he literally just sat down and started singing the song with no music, no effects, anything. And we could just, and he was, but the one thing that he was smart is he did it in a nice big room with like a high ceiling. And it had like it had a little ambience of its own, just the room. But I mean, it sounded great, man. And we were just like, that's our guy. We're going to go with Chalice. And he
Mhm.
really looks the part too. And he's just, we feel like with him in Denver, they're like the whole package. We got, seasoned guys that have experience, really talented, look cool, hungry to work, not afraid to work hard. They're everything we wanted. So, time will tell. I hope this is the last version of Vicious Rumors. I really do. I would love to have this be the last chapter of the
The
band.
last. Oh, okay, okay, amazing. Amazing. And other question about when you have more than 10 albums, it's completely normal that you repeat by yourself because you have your formula, you have your method to play guitar. That's completely normal over the years. You try to keep or try to maintain the same sound that you achieved since the 70s to now. That's completely normal, and you try to continue to evolve your sound, but with your first influence. That's completely normal for a musician. You try to keep one and you try to evolve in this one. So and for these new albums, all the time the new albums for Vicious Rumors sounds like sounds fresh, something new and these kind of things. So now how do you keep continue sounding French? Meanwhile, you trying to maintain your old sound.
I think that for me, I just I don't try to force the issue. It's like I think if you start thinking like too contrived about it, it starts getting a little like made up. I just want it to be from my balls and from my heart, you know, just fucking heavy metal, the riffs. And so if anything, this time around, I just kind of wanted to simplify everything a little bit and just really dig into some meat and potatoes riffs and beats. And the I love the music, and it's always a challenge to make a new record. So um I hope that I continue to get better as a songwriter, and as we keep going. And I just enjoy the action, man. I guess that's the main thing. I love the fans. I love hearing my guitar really loud on a PA. I love talking to the people and just making the connection that we make. I think that's the main thing. That's my main inspiration, is just the connection that I've made through people. And even it's generational. Like guys are coming to the shows with pictures of me and them from 25 years ago. And then now this year they've got their son with them, or their niece, or, you know, their cousin or something. It's like a generational thing. So like to connect with people through the power of music, and celebrate heavy metal with Vicious Rumors. I mean, it's just like, fuck, man, it's such an honor that it's something I hope I can just continue to do throughout my life.
Okay, 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 I understand completely. Now let's talk about more the promotion of this new album. So what kind of promotion do you have for this one? Perhaps you will release more videos, perhaps, well, you said it that you will do a tours when you heal from your arm. That's completely normal next year for 2026. But after that, perhaps you have more tours, more things, more scheduled things to do with Vision Rumors. Perhaps you're already working a new album, who knows? Because 5 years passed from the last one.
Absolutely. No, we plan on an even longer promotional campaign for this album, The Devil's Asylum, because especially with my injury, like I was going to be on tour, like I said, right now
Mhm.
in America. And the timing of that would have been beautiful because so much press is out right now for Vicious Rumors. But I've literally done about 75 interviews
Mhm.
just like this on Zoom with radio, with podcasts, with, uh, you know, main magazines like Rock Hard and Metal Hammer and things like that. Um, in Tokyo and Australia, just all around the world, man. It's just been a great response. So we're going to keep that going. We're going to have some playthroughs with Denver Cooper doing some playthroughs. We've got some live material we recorded on the last tour that really came out great. So we might do something with that. But we're just going to try to keep a nice constant push going from now till early next year when the band can return to playing live. And then our whole plan for next year is a Devil's Asylum world tour everywhere we can go. We're going to try to book the biggest, most thorough tour of the world we've ever done. That's the
Mm.
goal.
Okay. Okay. Now let's talk about more now about the heavy metal in general, all the metal in general, because as you can see, there's 30 or 40 releases per weekend. Vicious Rumors has an status on the heavy metal scene, but now there's 1,000 bands trying to copy or paste your sound, another sounds from the 80s, a lot of things, and in some ways the heavy metal stagnated with the old sounds, with your influence, Judas Priest, Iron Maiden. So, do you see
Yeah.
in the future that some bands will appear outside of the influence of the 80s or 90s? Because we have like a copy paste, a lot of bands that try to dress like you, try to play like you. Now there's overwhelming releases. So, do you think that in the future will appear at a band that is different than the bands from the 80s?
Yeah, I noticed that there certainly is a lot of like retro bands. I've been seeing a lot of these young bands that are dressing and playing, and their whole stage show and everything is looks like they look like a young Led Zeppelin or something.
Mhm.
Uh, there's been like this wave of like 70s bands even too, and it's kind of you know I mean, I hate to say it, but it's kind of like the same thing with Hollywood, like most movies are remakes, and I think people are running out of ideas. And so what do? They go back to the good stuff, the good old stuff. And I think that's what happens. I think you can only go so far with a lot of um, music that isn't from the heart. When music is just created off computers and AI and all this other shit, it just loses its soul. And um, so people go back and they rediscover bands, that they sometimes hadn't thought of. And I think it's a cool thing. As far as new bands, yeah, there's always somebody coming, man. There's always somebody coming. And that's what makes it go forward. So I'm all for it.
Mhm. Okay, okay. And other topic that I want to ask you is because you were there. when all the things started, especially with the heavy metal, with the great band, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest. You are from US, but since in the 70s, um, US doesn't or didn't have any a huge band. For example, like Judas Priest, like Iron Maiden, all this kind of sounds comes or came from UK or from UK at that moment. So and now we don't. Now the biggest bands are that ones. So but now you can see that the bigger the scene from US or create a new bands, extreme metal, etc. etc. So why always the heavy metal sings in the 70s or 80s in the US it wasn't too strong like the UK scene because we have a few bands from the 70s or 80s or 80s especially. We have Manowar, we have Virgin Steel, we have we have Armored Saint, but we don't have like UK bands. We have 10 or 20 bands at that moment. We have Angel Witch, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and the list continues. There's a thousand more. So now, what do you think? Not US never brings or a great band like this kind of bands, Iron Maiden, Judas Priest.
Man, that's a really tough question because early on, when I first got into metal, I mean, it was basically Judas Priest, Black Sabbath, and fucking Iron Maiden. You know what I mean?
Mm-mm.
I was into metal even before that, before some of those bands. But I mean, when I was like literally just planning Vicious Rumors and thinking about the bands that I love the most, and then even above that, when I was a kid, like was growing up with Led Zeppelin, and I always thought, how incredible they were. But all I realized that all my heroes were from England, or Germany, Uh, same thing with like Accept and UFO and Scorpions and like, all these bands I loved. Um, the funny thing about that is if you ask those bands, the stuff that they loved was the American blues guys in the 50s.
Well, yeah,
If you ask older guys like the
yeah.
guys in Priest and Sabbath and Jimmy Page, he's going to tell you about Howlin' Wolf and
Mm.
uh, great blues artists that were these American blues guys, man. And that's kind of where it's funny how it just went back and forth. But
Mhm.
my heroes were all from overseas too, of course, except for when I discovered Van Halen and Randy Rhoads and stuff like those guys as far as guitar players.
Mhm.
Uh, and then, you know, America went for bands. I think it was more rock and roll bands, like Aerosmith and Van Halen and stuff like that. It wasn't really all out metal, like the European scene. And that's why I was always uh lean towards that side. But it's funny, man. Everybody's influenced by something. And it's funny, like, a lot of people are influenced by American bands were influenced by Sabbath, Priest, and Zeppelin, Scorpions, and then Zeppelin and Deep Purple and uh, Sabbath and them were influenced by American blues artists. So it's like this chain that's kind of gone back and forth.
Okay, well, that is true. That is true. That is completely true. So now one of the
Yeah.
last questions for this interview, Jeff, it is, for example, is now, as you can see, there is a new kind of ways to record music or to play live gigs now because there's no like the 80s when you with amps or to try to play gigs with amps. Now just the bigger bands has this kind of option to play with amps with crowd involved into the sound. Now these smaller bands are using just more like plugins, just one person to handle everything with plugins, not using at the time to record using just plugins on the studio and not releasing with amps anymore. So now that's the future. Many people think there's be filter, but because you don't need to hang up or carry a huge amp for the band. That's a lot of things, different completely. So, but now some bands prefer that. The new bands prefer that, but the old bands prefer the old way to record music, the old way to play gig show or shows in general. So now,
Yeah.
what's your opinion about this new, well, this new movement that will be a trend in the future? That no more amps, no more crowd involved and a live concert. And so many people think the AI is killing the music. But if we can see with this new technology, there's no crowd working for a band. Just one people handle everything.
Yeah, I've done it both ways, you know. Of course, in the early days, it was all big amps. And then, you know, I did also, I've done the direct, pedal board. You just one pedal and it's like your amp, your pedal board, everything you need, one chord straight into it, you're done, you know. But you don't really have the amps on stage. It's just going through the PA system. And there's something that's easy about that. But honestly, I'm just an old school guy. So, well, I kind of have the best of both worlds. I use a 50-watt EVH tube amplifier that just screams, and it's got the greatest feedback. All I have to do is like turn sideways, and my guitar just starts humming. And that doesn't really, I don't know, I could never get the pedal boards to do that. They sounded good, but I could never get them to really sound like they were just alive, like my amplifier. So I just use a small one. It's very easy to move around. It's small but sounds huge with a basic pedal board. So I'm an old school guy. I prefer the amps. Um, but I also rely on modern technology. And this album, The Devil's Asylum, was made at 4 different recording studios at the same time because we have this kind of modern technology where we can just send the tracks all to one place and get it mixed. And so we had a studio in Florida doing guitar solos. We had 2 studios in California doing vocals and sound effects. Then we had a studio in Sweden where the bass guitars were being recorded. And I remember there was a day when I was at the studio with Chalice with Juan Artiaga and Jimmy Evans at the Pacheco House of Metal that Juan it's his studio. And anyway, I was on the phone to like all 3 studios, and we were all working at the same time, and it was just you know you couldn't do that when I first started. um, you were cutting 2-inch tape with a razor blade and taping it back together and stuff like that. But so yeah, I love the convenience of today. And when you have people like Juan Ortiaga behind the board, it sounds just as fat and as heavy as ever. And the end result was we recorded it all around the world, but when you listen to it, it sounds like we're playing in your living room.
Well,
So um, it's a beautiful thing that the technology is there to work like that.
Okay. Well, yeah, that is true. That is true. Well, Geoff, we arrived to the sad moment of this interview. Thank you very much for your time. It always a album from the Vicious Rumor has your sound. We don't have any kind of discuss about that one. So congratulations on this new one. And perhaps you want to
Thank
add
you.
something. And perhaps you want to add something to your Latin American fans that expect someday a full Latin American tour. Who knows when? And perhaps,
Oh
and
man,
obviously, Metallica followers.
I sure hope it's in 2026. We want to get back there so bad, and it's just it's all just business where it takes you. But in touring, it's so expensive these days. But like I said earlier, we are planning to do our biggest tour we've ever done next year. So I'm going to do everything possible to get there. And I just want to thank all the fans of metal down there, all your listeners, and keep celebrating heavy metal with Vicious Rumors, man. The Devil's Asylum comes out tomorrow.